Silly. What? Ha ha ha. Silly. What?
Okay. We have on the show today, we are welcoming back to the show Miss Danielle Fabrega, also known as Danielle Chitwood, and as the Town Seraph. She is an incredible creative in so many facets. Not only is she a great artist, but she is an entrepreneur, a mom, an incredible Scrabble player, and she is quite punny. She's very punny. She's very good at that. I'm not good at that. Danielle is coming to us for me. She's coming from down the street in South Carolina. And she's going to school us on a book that she read that had great impact on her called Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. Now, I did listen to this book on Audible, but it was before all of these like changes in my life started happening. So like maybe it had an impact, but at the time I thought, wow, this is incredible, but I don't know how to implement any of this because my life is a fucking whirlwind. And then I thought, well, maybe it did without me knowing. So that's why we wanted you on today to talk about this book. Brooke and I are going through so many changes, obviously. And I felt like if you guided us a little bit, at least for me, I think I'm ready to hear it again in this new atmosphere that I'm in. So I feel like having you on is going to help me actually hear the book.
process the book. Yes. Okay.
Yes, process the book.
Yeah. Well, so what has been going on in your life lately that warranted you reading this book?
Okay.
Like you were like, I have to read this.
Yeah. Well, I read it, I think it was late last fall, maybe December. And the reason I read it was because I had reached out to one of the Facebook groups that I belong to in search of just like, content or podcasts or books that would help me in this next phase of my career, which was prompted by a discussion that I had with my husband when I was just feeling a little like stuck, and like I'd been doing my Town Seraph and my creative business for it's 7 years at that point. I think we're on year 8
can you
now.
elaborate on what Town Seraph is for those that were not listening to your previous
they didn't
episode?
listen to my first. Well, go back and listen to that first.
That's right.
Okay, so the Town Seraph started off as a calligraphy business, and it has morphed into a product-based business where I sell art prints and keychains and products and stationery. I do custom illustration. So it's basically like my creative side hustle that I've been doing for the last 8 years now. And it's taken lots of different forms. But as of about last year, I was kind of at a crossroads where I was like, do I want to keep doing this, or do I want to think about doing something else? I'd always kept the Town Seraph kind of on the back burner. It's a business that I started, and I threw a lot into it at the beginning when my kids were young, but as much as I could, so to speak, because they needed me a lot. Yeah. And I always thought like, I'll keep it on the back burner kind of at a nice rolling boil. And then when the kids don't need me anymore, maybe I'll just take it full throttle and turn it into more of a real business, hire people. I already wholesale, but like turn my product line into a larger scale business. That was always kind of the intention. But then when the rubber met the road, and last year was about the time where it's like, okay, both of my kids are in school full time. Obviously they still need me, but I have like a whole swath of time during the day that I could be working. And I picked up tennis in the last couple of years, and I got really fanatical about that. And I kind of reached a point where I'm like, there's only so much tennis I can play. There's only so many days in the week I can like go out to lunch with my girlfriends. It's time to, really take stock of my life. I have probably a good 20 years left of a career left in me. If I want to pivot and do something else, it could be like an encore career. So I really looked at what I was doing and said, do I want to take this off of the rolling boil and turn it into a full meal, or is it time to do something else? So that's when I went to my community and said, I need help. What should I do? What should I read? Who should I talk to? And so many people recommended this book for people who are at a crossroads, who are really looking to make a change in their life and really looking to do it in a meaningful way and have it be something that is going to make your life an intentional, meaningful, mindful life, and how that connects to your work and what you do. So I hope that explains a little bit. And so I got recommended the book. I bought the book. I read the book. I did the
Like read
exercises.
it on the paper?
I read it on paper. Yes, I
Because it
actually.
comes with the PDFs and stuff where you
Yes.
they give you worksheets that you can
Yes.
do stuff. And actually, Brooke, I want to go through a couple of them later on because I feel like for our stuff going on and then independently what we have going on, I think it'd be really good for it. It just sounds so interesting. And I want to write stuff
It
down
is.
and talk to you guys about
Well,
it.
and I will tell you, Mel, that the first thing you said when you said that you listened to it and you're not sure if it had as much of an impact on your life, I will tell you that it's not just, I wouldn't say it's just a book to read once or even just to listen to while you're doing things. It's like an activity. Like the things that they have you do are, you got to journal, you got to mine through your past and see what worked, what didn't work. You really got to do the exercises.
Yeah.
And it's not just the book. So apparently, I didn't even know this, but in addition to the original book, there's now two subsequent books. There's like designing your work life, and now there's like designing your new work life. So there's a whole community, and
we're never gonna reach the fucking
you know what? Just
promised land.
Just read one of them. The book is actually based on a very popular course at Stanford. So these two gentlemen, Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, they run the D School at Stanford, and this was a very popular course that they turned into a book. And so that's where it all came from. You can go online. There's a TED Talk that kind of distills it down into a nice little, half an hour bite if you'd prefer to do that, or go out and get the books. I read the one book. I actually did the exercises, and in preparation for this podcast, I went back and was like looking at my notes and reading some of the the chapters again, and I found it to be really helpful and interesting because when I first read it, I was like, okay, this is the point that I'm at in my life, and now a lot has changed in even 6 months, and I'm kind of re-examining some of the things that I thought when I originally did it. And I think it's so telling because the whole point of the book is to think like a designer. So anytime you're designing, whether it be a product, a tangible product, or a digital product, or whatever it is you're designing, you should be constantly trying to make something better. Number one, hopefully that's your goal. And then number two, you should think like a designer by going through the steps of human-centered design. You should be, they say in the book, first you have to accept the problem. You have to empathize. You have to define. You have to ideate. You have to prototype, and then you have to test. So it's a process, and it takes that's why I'm really glad that I went back and started thinking about the stuff again, because I'm like, oh, okay, this is I'm still prototyping, I'm still testing,
and that's what caught my eye or caught my ear was when they talked about designing your life. At first I thought it was going to only be for creatives or people in design or artists or whatever, but the way they even started the book was like they created something for the computer. They created the keyboard in a different way where it would flip out or whatever. And so the things that we don't think about that are design, right? They had to design something to make the computer an easier laptop. And they talked about how the problem, everyone needs to find what their problem is so they can solve it. So it could be, I hate how my cord goes into my phone. Well, let's redesign that cord, right? And so you find the problem in your life, whether you're a nurse or a teacher or whatever. If there's something that you feel is a problem, that's great because now you get to solve it. Now you get to figure out how to solve it. So I liked that it wasn't just for creative artists and stuff like that, even though the name of the book it scared me a little bit, the name of the book.
Yeah, I can see
It sounds a lot like it adds the scientific side of it, like what you were saying, your steps of designing your life is almost like scientific steps.
Yeah.
You're figuring it out, you're empathizing, now you're prototyping, now you're doing this, and you go through all these phases of I didn't read the book.
but recognizing them and knowing that you have to do one thing at a time. You can't just jump to the end, right? You have to do what acceptance of there's a problem. I don't like my job. I'm not making enough money. I live in the wrong place. I am, want things to be different, whatever it is, identify that and then take the very next.
Ideate, absolutely. There's a systematic framework to solving these problems in your life. And I think that human-centered design takes a psychological approach and a systematic approach to making something better. And I think that was really what was revolutionary for me about the book. It's like, I've never really thought about it like that. I've always thought about like, okay, you got your life and then you've got your work and then everything. I always kind of lived in these disparate categories. But one of the basic tenets of the book is to connect the dots. And this is what really resonated with me was you have to connect the dots of who you are, what you believe, and what you do. Right. So and that made me realize that that's what was missing in my previous work lives, is that I wasn't doing work that really resonated with who I am and what I believe and how I want to show up in the world. And I'm talking about not the creative stuff that I've been doing the last 8 years, but like my way back when I was working in an office and I was doing consumer marketing and that kind of stuff. It's like, it was great in its own way, but it wasn't really how I wanted to show up in the world as far as like the impact. And I think you also reach a certain age where you look at what you're doing and you're like, is this the legacy that I want to leave? Is this how I want to show up in the world? And is this, you only have so much time. And this for me is an age where I'm like, okay, it's kind of like, pardon my language,
legacy shows up.
Like, so it's like, so I morphed over to the creative career that I've been doing for the last 8 years. But now I'm kind of at a point where I'm like, okay, this has been great and it's filling my cup creatively. But I also I want to contribute more to my family's my husband and I's retirement. I want, there's financial goals that I have that aren't being met. And whatever those goals are, it's an individual thing. Like you have to really sit down and always be aware of how your goals are being met or not met so that you can then reassess and say, well, what do I need to do to get there? So that was number one for me that really set off the bells. I was like, okay, yes, connecting the dots, who I am, what I believe, and what I do. And my ideal goal, and I haven't found it yet, still work in progress, but is finding the next stage, the next career path is something that really makes that triangle.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And how did the book help you in that way? Did the book, is it guiding you, especially in retrospect now, if you're looking back at your notes? Because I think that that's always why journaling is so important. And, you can figure out basically where your mindset was at that time, or what was there a part in the book that has helped you or figure that part out?
Yeah. So basically they do lead you through a bunch of different exercises. A lot of the, at the beginning of the book is kind of mining through your past experiences and figuring out. What I like about it is it does kind of combine that left and right brain quality of okay, yes, you should have an emotional reaction to things that feel good, but you should also use your, logical side to say okay, this is what I need. This is how much money I need to make, or this is, and then also when you're making a decision, what feels good in your gut, and what's the thing that you do that you just lose yourself, that you're in creative flow, right? Whatever that is. Maybe it's not even, for some people who aren't in the creative world, maybe it's not a creative flow. It's just they're in spreadsheet flow. I don't know. I'm a creative person, so I'm not sure.
I love a spreadsheet.
I was going to say, Brooke is, that'll get her off in a hot second.
So it does kind of, I'll give you an example. One of the exercises that the book leads you through is building your Odyssey lives. So they talk about how one of the limiting dysfunctional beliefs that is holding us back is that there is only one singular path towards your best life, right? If you're one of those lucky people that just knew from the time you were 6 years old that you wanted to be a doctor and save lives when you grow up, congratulations, that's awesome. But that's very, very rare. And most of us have lots of iterations of lives that we could lead. And I think that if you are beholden to the belief that there's only one thing out there for you and you haven't found it yet, then that's just going to weigh you down and make you feel like a failure. Yeah. Because the truth is that that's not true. There's many different paths to a great life, and only you can determine what is best for you, and only you can get yourself there. So the Odyssey exercise had you sit down right now where you're at, think of 3 different options for where you see your life going, right? And then build out a 5-year plan. Say your number one option is and I'm just going to go crazy here, but that you want to be a clown in the circus. So it's okay, I'm going to become a clown. And
No, but
this
that's
is
what they say though too, is like it doesn't have to be realistic, right? So it
no,
could be, I want to be like, for me, I want to be a director and I want to
right.
be working in theater and making money. And then my second one is I want to work in voiceover solely and make money
Yes.
doing that because I love being in my studio. And the third one is I'm going to I work with animals, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to become an animal trainer again and do all that stuff. And so it doesn't have to be coinciding things either.
No.
And so just the 3 things that you know you love,
But also,
identify what that
like,
is at the end goal.
when you do that, what they encourage you to do with that exercise is not just do work projections, but also do like add your personal goals in there because they are all intertwined. So like say it's on your bucket list to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Well, you might have to make a certain amount of money to do that, or you might have to be in a certain health, like you know, exercise and health routine. So all of those things are intertwined. So if you put it all on paper, it allows you to see things clearly. Like these are my priorities in the next 5 years. And what do I need to do to get there to have the best, most well-rounded version of my life that's going to achieve the goals that are most important to me. So, you know, there's so many different ways that you could go, but when you actually put it down on paper, it's helpful. And they say only to do, I think they only have you do like maybe 3 in the
Yeah,
book.
he said 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he gives a really great example, which stayed with me, which is like, because I suffer a lot from like FOMO, what do you call it? Analysis paralysis, like decision fatigue, because I feel like I can do lots of different things and I'm interested by lots of different things. But then I'm just like, there's too many options. And then I just do nothing.
Right.
So he gave this great example. I think it was in the book and it was also in his TED Talk where he's like, there's like a Stanford study where there's a woman who has a display in the grocery store. And at first she has a display of 6 jams and shoppers come in and they like, oh, look at the jams. And like a third of them buy a jam. And then in the next example, the woman has like 28 jams, all different flavors, right? And shoppers come through and a lot more shoppers come and look because it's exciting, it's enticing. Like, look at all the jams, this bacon jalapeno and all these different options. But considerably fewer people actually buy the jam. I can't remember the actual statistic, but it's considerably fewer because there's too many choices.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that really like sat with me because I was like, I feel like I suffer from that a lot where I'm like, too many choices. So I just do nothing.
I think that's why In-N-Out has such a great model. In-N-Out burger.
Yeah.
They've been around for so long. You have a hamburger, a double hamburger, a cheeseburger, a double cheeseburger. Like
exactly.
That's
why when I go to the Cheesecake Factory, I am so overwhelmed.
No.
I can't read a book to order for dinner. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like,
we need pictures.
Pictures,
Yes.
exactly.
I need
They do
photos
that in
and
real
I need
estate
limited
too.
options.
Yeah, where if you're a real estate agent, I did this when I first was doing real estate in LA, and I would be like, there's 7, 10 houses that are amazing, da, da, da. And then I would lose clients because they were like, I don't know yet, I don't know. And then I learned later, I was like, no, you show them 3, show them 3 houses.
Same thing with creative, like when you're a designer, you don't show a client like 10 options, like you show them 2 to 3, and then because it's overwhelming. So that was another part of the book. When you do your Odyssey lives, don't do 10, do 3. You know,
Yeah. And also share it with the people around you, not just for accountability, but so that if I tell you guys my 3 lives, right, my 3 goals, and I've mapped it out, you guys can not only cheer me on, but also come up with ideas that, oh, well, what if in this you did this? But I know this makes you happy. So why don't we add this? So having a group of 3 or 5 people where you continuously check in on those 3 lives and where they're going and how you're going to help each other and root each other on and come up with creative ideas and brainstorming to fulfill those goals.
They talk about in the book, they call it radical collaboration. So having a bias to action, which means don't just talk about things, actually do things. And you don't have to like say you're thinking of a new career path. That doesn't mean like go take a job. It means like maybe go talk to somebody who works in that job or find a mentor, whatever. It doesn't have to be fully commit to the path.
Well, and that was an example. An example he did give was that this woman she worked in something, and she decided that she really wanted to open a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And she just put all of her money into it, and she found a spot, and she hired people, and it was amazing, and and she fucking hated it.
Yeah.
Because she should have gone and worked in a coffee shop.
Right.
She should have talked to people who own coffee shops, because her big dream, and she put all of this time and effort into it. And really what she realized after she was doing it was, I want to just have pop-up shops in certain places and make it more of a community, or whatever it was, beer, whatever. And I was thinking, I've gone through that where I'm like even Brooke and I have talked about, like, we want to own a theater and da-da-da-da-da. And then, or I want to be an actor. I want to be on stage. I want to do all these things. And then as I've evolved and I've tried to listen to myself, I'm like, I actually like acting in front of actors.
Yeah.
As workshopping with them. I don't actually like people watching me act in an audience. I hate curtain calls.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want that attention. I want the attention from my respected colleagues and peers, which is what makes me a better, I love directing more than I love, actually performing.
Yes. And that example you gave about the woman in the coffee shop is like, it's dangerous, because I think we all fall prey to the sunk cost fallacy, which is like, well, you've already invested X into this, and when you realize it's like not for you, or a failure, you're like tied to it because you have an emotional attachment, you have a financial attachment. So I think it's really important to ideate, is that stage is really important. Just like throw all the ideas out there and see what sticks, even if they're crazy, even if they sound insane. Like, throw all the ideas out there and then just start to prototype, like, try things on. But again, don't go fully down the path. Just talk to people. And I think for me, the radical collaboration was a key, because I've always been very independent. Like, I got to do it on my own, But I found that in this next chapter of my life, putting myself out there, being vulnerable, asking for help, like, I've been blown away by how many people just want to help me. Strangers on the internet. Like, I've posted on my Facebook groups, and I've had mentor calls, like a woman in New York just like spent an hour on the phone with me, just out of the goodness of her heart. Because she was like, a lot of people helped me because I fast forward to like one of the decisions I made after I read this book was that I wanted to try to go into UX design, user interface design, user experience. So I've been dabbling in that. I've taken a few courses. I'm still deciding whether or not I'm still prototyping. But I had like an hour-long conversation with this woman who was like, a lot of people helped me when I was first starting out in UX design, and I just want to pay it forward. And I was so touched.
I think that's the thing too,
that.
is if you don't ask, you don't get. And so
Exactly.
you have to, it's really okay to ask. It's really okay to reach out. It's really, because a lot of people I know, people reach out to me. I want to help.
Yeah.
Right. So why do I get so afraid of asking?
Yes. I'm very like, no, I'm do it on my own. Like, and silly. It's taken me years and years and years to like accept. Just, yes, I want X, and see what shows up for you, So that's been
so
really
where
helpful.
is it taking you now? So you're still in prototype, you were saying, where you're kind of dabbling.
I spent the first few months of the year getting certified in UX design. I took a Google course offered on Coursera. So I did get certified in UX design. I spent the first half of the summer starting to apply for jobs and was getting a lot of rejection, which was its own animal as far as how I dealt with that. And, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome of being like, I'm a mom who's coming back into the workforce after having left 7-8 years ago. Is there ageism at play? All these people that I'm seeing on LinkedIn, and even the hiring managers are like a good bit younger than me. And I'm like, I've had to kind of go through this series of responses and reactions to it as a woman of a certain age, as a mom coming back into the workforce, like what sort of forces are at play. But it's been good for me, because I've really been forced to be like, hey, none of this is personal, nowadays with AI, like a lot of people aren't even really seeing your resume is just getting like sent through an automated software that says well, this person has these keywords and this person doesn't. And speaking of AI, I think that's what Bill Burnett and Dave Evans' most recent book talks about, which is like how to adapt to the new way of doing things. And I think it's more important than ever that we think like designers now, because we have to adapt. We have to reframe. Like there's robots now doing jobs that people used to do. And I think a lot of people are afraid of that. A lot of people are afraid of AI and what that means for their career path. So I think it's more important than ever that we're all thinking like designers, that we're fast on our feet, that we're agile, that we're, you know, reframing situations and our lives. Because if you're static, then you probably are going to very quickly get outdated.
Yeah. That's
Anyway.
a fear I have too. Same thing. I've been going through that same thing. You know, going back into the workforce after 8 years, like updating resume, sent out resume with cover letter, and you know, you got to kind of delicately and humorously put in like why you may see a gap in my, you know, you don't say that, but you know, you have to like frame it to where I was after working on growing my family, I went back to school, and you can see how it has helped my resume. And, you know, it's just like, you know, and my husband who owns a business, I'm sitting there going like, but would you hire a 40-something-year-old woman in like a, not entry, but like mid entry, just because they they may have the skills and may be able to do the job, but they don't have the backup experience of like, you know, it's like, and he's like, that's not, you know, of course he wanted to give a fucking answer because I know what the answer is.
I mean,
no.
He does talk about that a little bit. He's there's a guy that was stuck in without doing actionable problems, right? He was stuck with the gravity. Like gravity, you can't do anything about it, right? You can't do anything about the fact that you missed 8 years. There's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
But what you can do is right, something that's just not going to go away, right? Nothing you can do will change that, or you can't change the perception of that business owner that you want to get in with. But what you can do is volunteer for their company, or what you can do is network in that area, or what you can do is fill in those gaps of those 8 years. Instead of having an 8-year gap, everything you've done to get to this point, every show you've directed, every board you've been on and all that stuff, all of that counts. So you can start to, he says, you can start to fill that time with other things that coincide with the job you're looking for, because you probably already have done those things. And we don't think of putting it on our resume because it just was,
it wasn't like paid. It wasn't like a hire.
Right.
It was,
but you did it.
It was,
you were on boards of theaters and fill all of that space that you think you're missing those 8 years. Actually, Deborah Lynn said that to me once, because I came back and I was like, Deborah Lynn, I've been gone for like, 10 years. And she's like, but you've been doing shit. And I'm like, yeah, but it wasn't, I don't have any, more co-stars or guest stars on my resume. And she's like, but you've been directing, so she was like, your resume is so full. Stop thinking that you've been out of the industry for 10 years. Yeah. And, I don't want to be an actor anymore. And Deborah Lynn has passed away, but it stuck with me.
Well, but
tragedy, but comes
right. Sorry, greatest podcast ever, hilarious.
No, but I think that's interesting, because it's like also going back to that way of thinking and nipping that in the bud, because I think only, not to make it about a gendered thing, but I think women do that a lot. Women are like, yeah, but it's like, let me tell you about raising kids and how that is harder than anything that my husband does at his computer all day. And he'll tell you that too. So it's like what we've done, like same thing as you, what I've done for the last 9 years is not applicable. The fact that our society does not put a valuable price tag on what mothers do, the invisible work that we do, is sad. But again, is that a gravity problem? Can we do anything about that? Maybe, maybe not. That's a conversation for another podcast. Yeah. But I think that, it is important to stop that limiting belief and just have a biased action and just put yourself out there. I don't see any men saying like, yeah, but I don't know. Is that really worth anything? No. Change the wording on your resume. Like Charles helped me with that tremendously when I first started, noodling with my resume. He's like, change this to say this and this and this. And he had no qualms about like, but you did do this, Danielle. You are qualified. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, but technically did I? And it's like, no.
Because we're too honest about it.
Because we're too honest. But you know what? They're not talking to me. It's impersonal. They're just looking at me on a piece of paper. And, and if you want to get in the door, you have to have a biased action. You have to present yourself. I mean, I'm not saying lie, but there is a way to present yourself in a
but account for all
way.
the things Yeah.
Exactly. That it can, that, you know, reframe. We keep talking about reframing, but reframe the things that you've done to make it appear the way it should, which, you know,
Right.
what do they say? You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Just throw your hat into the ring. Who cares if you're
Yeah.
not qualified? What's the worst that can happen? They can say like, yeah, and that's why I think all these rejections have been good for me. Like I spent most of the summer feeling really like, oh God, like what was I thinking? Like going, you know,
Yeah.
getting back in there. I'm not qualified. I haven't been working, but now I'm like, you know what? Who cares? Like apply. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no, thank you, and I move on. And life, the
Or
world
it
is
might
still
go in a
rotating.
different direction. Like you might have a conversation with someone because you're in this situation and they said no, and then something comes up that is, you know, somebody that works for them. You meet at a coffee. Like you just never
You just
know
never know
what's
exactly,
going to
and
lead
you
to what.
just yeah. I've lost a lot of my fear around putting myself out there, and at the end of the day, like I think it's fine to be. You can still be kind and say no, right? Like if you have good boundaries and you put yourself out there and somebody comes back with something, I can still say, oh, that's not for me. You know, I think I used to
Yeah.
have a fear around, well, don't put yourself out there because you're going to get things that you don't want. And I've always had a hard time saying no. I've always had a hard
Yeah.
time turning people away. But now I feel much more in control of my boundaries. And I've learned the hard way that like, no, I can still be a nice person, but be firm in what I
Yeah.
want and have good boundaries. And
Is that a 40s thing? Because
think it
I
must
feel
be.
that the same way. I'm like, give zero fucks in a
Fuck.
kind way.
Yeah,
Do you know
in a
what I
kind way. Like
mean?
I'm still nice.
Yeah, of course. But I've way more. I can completely relate to everything you just said. I feel like I was a lot like that in my 30s or even, you know, my 20s. You didn't have that awareness. And then your 30s, but also too, because I was home with the kids a lot and just trying to like take courses or, you know, jump in on projects where I could. Right.
Yeah.
But then because I feel like you're not getting paid or, you know, maybe it didn't pan out like you had anticipated that it doesn't count.
Right.
And now that I'm in my 40s and, you know, I'm just not going to put up with people's bullshit. And I am putting myself out there. And I feel the same way. I feel like if I put it out there and I get a yes, but then I don't want to do it, I'll just tell them no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Be like, but you put your well, yeah, I changed my mind.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. That's okay. I love that. I love that. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, super relatable. So I think if there's anyone listening who is not of our age, who is younger,
Get it
take
together.
that to heart. Take it to heart because, like, you know, it's not going to hurt you to put it out there. Like you said, it's not going to hurt to what the worst are going to say no, and then you move on. And that wasn't the right thing for you anyway. So,
Yeah. Well, thankfully, I think the younger generations weren't raised like we were to be people pleasers so much. So hopefully that's
Yeah.
like, to me, that's like enlightening. And I hope that the generations of women, I think they are a lot bolder and more self-possessed. And I think that's good. I think that's progress because I know that our generation was raised to be like seen and not heard and, you know, smile and
Smile.
be pretty and people please. And I hope that
Yeah.
that's going away more and more. It's a shame it took us this long to
Yeah.
I know,
change
right?
that, but better late than never.
well, what's
Yeah,
going
right?
on
We
with
still
you
have
next then? So what are you thinking? I mean, has this book provoked outside of the couple courses you're taking? Are you now prototyping like one of your second or third options or
I think I'm sticking with, I'm still trying to find a job in UX design. I'm still doing the town serif, but I'm kind of not investing any new energy into it. So that being said, like I still have my Etsy shop. I still do a couple of custom orders here and there and jobs. I'm not doing away with it entirely just because it is a nice passive income on the side and it's already been built. So why get rid of it now?
Yeah.
But I, you know, preparing for this podcast did have me go back to the book and it made me realize like I need to go back and do some of these exercises again. It's a constant process. You know, I need to start journaling again and really like as I go through this process, because like, I don't know for sure. I still haven't gotten a job in UX design. I don't know if I really want to be a UX designer. I'm still
Right.
talking to people. I'm still applying for jobs. But I think the important thing is to like, in the job search process also, I've gotten really attached to jobs that I see. I'm like, oh, this job would be perfect, which is kind of ridiculous. My husband tells me, he's like, you know, you could love that job on paper, but in reality, it could be terrible, you know? So don't get too
Right.
attached to a job description or the idea of a company, just have a bias to action. Just get out there and do things and then figure out this works for me. This doesn't work for me. Okay, let me not do this anymore. Let me do more of that. So I'm in that weird limbo phase where I haven't quite found that next opportunity because, you know, I'm still trying to find somebody to respond to my resume. But I haven't been submitting a lot. After my first like slew of rejections, I was like, let me take a break from my ego.
Take a break.
But it's funny because like what's interesting is when I actually set my plan and I was like, okay, I'm going to take these courses. I'm going to spend the summer applying. And then my husband and I are celebrating our 10-year anniversary and we're going to Italy in like 3 weeks. And so I was always like, well, hopefully by fall I'll have a job. So really like nothing has not gone according to plan as of now.
Right.
So, you know, who knows?
I'm going to tell you what, when you do that, when you leave and you go out of the country or you go on vacation or whatever, that break, 3 times that has happened to me where I went to Thailand and my life changed. I went to Maldives and my life changed. I went to Spain or where did I go? France. I don't know, France and Italy.
You went to Italy and your life changed.
I definitely went to Italy.
Oh yes,
we all know that story. But every time that has happened in my life, because I'm away from it all and I've taken that step back and I'm in a completely different, I come back and I have a better idea of what, you know, I mean, obviously not everybody can just take trips to Italy or whatever, but maybe it's a week off of work.
Yeah.
And you say,
I was going to say, maybe you just go to another town in your state. You know what I mean? Like just for a weekend kind of getaway and go reset and get out of your.
I mean, that's like sometimes just
space.
Like when you're battling a problem, it's just so important to just give yourself some stillness, I think, to like stare at a wall.
That's what it is.
And
listen. Just sit and listen. You can't have any ideas. It's sort of my meditation because I don't know how to meditate, but I'm doing nothing but listening. I'm not making decisions. I'm not coming up with ideas. I'm just going to listen. And then there's nothing in my brain. And so it allows other things to come in to help me.
Yes.
She just goes like this, blank stare.
Yeah.
I do that though. When I'm directing.
I know you do.
No,
she's like, please hold.
That's when the magic's happening. You get crazy eyes.
That's right.
Something's happening.
And everybody thinks that she's mad at them.
I know. I did that. I was walking Yoshi yesterday and it was like twilight and there was one of those beautiful egrets walking along the pond and it was just kind of like walking and then it would reach out and eat a fish, like, or do something. I don't know. It was feeding, I guess. And I just stared at that bird for like a good 10 minutes. And my neighbor came up. She's like, what are you doing? And I was like, just communing with nature. It's just so nice sometimes to like just unplug and be like, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter, first of all. And also like how cool it is to just be present and, you know, enjoy the dusk and this crazy white bird eating fish. Yeah.
So I feel like takeaways being, you know, figure out what your top 3 goals, kind of make a 5-year plan, and then implement it, right? Or go out and do what you got to do to get it done. And then go touch grass.
Really. Look at birds. Go birding. Go bird watching. That's more and more.
Moral of the story. The Stanford men, after all of this time and work and courses,
you can go spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a Stanford education, or you can just listen to this podcast and look at some birds and get exactly the same value out of it. So you're welcome.
Fuck Stanford.
Amazing. Danielle, thank you so much, honey, for taking the time to hang out with us again and share this book with us and our listeners.
What are we going to talk about next time?
Oh my gosh.
I know. Well, see what maybe we do the group of the 3, you know, the 3 things or 3 lives that we want to live. And we check in with each other and
we ask our listeners if they're doing it. Like, who's doing it? What are we doing?
Yeah. I love that.
Danielle, you got something to tell us? Moms are too.
Got something to tell you right now. Today.
Oh gosh, I have all kinds of things to tell you. No, I do have one. I have a funny story to tell you. Something it just happened this morning, actually. So Mel, you know Jackson. Brooke, I don't think you've met Jackson, but my son just turned 9, and he's a funny boy. He's like got a really great sense of humor. He always keeps me on my toes. But this morning he came up to me as I was getting ready from school, and he said, Mommy, can I get into trouble for something that I didn't do? And I was like, no, honey, like, you're not going to get in trouble for something that you didn't do. And he goes, good, because I didn't do my homework. And I was like,
What a smart
My God.
boy.
How do you get mad at that?
So I was thinking about that earlier, because I was like, that is so in sort of in theme with what we've been talking about, in the sense that, like, it's really easy to reframe things. And he does that for me all the time. Like, he just catches me off guard. He said to me, it's a very similar story, but like last year when he was at school, he was getting into trouble a lot. And one night, as I was putting him to bed, I said, Jackson, have you gotten into trouble? Did you get into trouble today at school? And he goes, no, Mommy, not today. And I was like, oh, good. I'm proud of you. And he goes, Mom, it's only Monday. And I was like, so, like, these are the kinds of things that he says to me. But I will just say, it's a nice closure to remember that you can always, number one, reframe every comment, every situation. And number two, it's just really great to look at everything with a sense of humor, and to remember that, like, you know, not to take everything so seriously, that it's really, you're just supposed to have fun and laugh and, you know, enjoy those moments with your kids.
And it's allowed to be always only Monday. It's only Monday.
It's only Monday. Exactly. Yeah. You get the
I
whole
have
rest
so
of
much
the
time
week.
to get in trouble or make new decisions or start a new life
or screw up
or not do your
whatever.
homework.
If I create a problem, or it's only Monday.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Moms are too.